Get started since we were already quite a bit behind. Welcome to today's City Council meeting. We're grateful to have you join us. As you probably have seen, we continue to hold electronic meetings due to the practice of social distancing. Although conducting our meetings electronically is different from our familiar in-person public process, this is still considered an open and public meeting. For the work session, we welcome members of the public who may be watching our usual live video feeds on the council's agenda page, YouTube, SLC TV, or Facebook Live. Today is a work session only day, and there is no public comment scheduled. However, next Tuesday, October 6th, will be the next opportunity for the public to comment during our 7 p.m. formal meeting. Your feedback is always welcome, and you can reach the Salt Lake City Council anytime by mailing us at P.O. Box 145 476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114 5476, or by emailing us at council.comments@slcgov.com, or by calling our 24-hour phone comment line at 801 535 7654. Now we'll move on to our work session items. Our first item is related to updates on the mayor's proclamation declaring local emergencies for COVID-19, the March earthquake, and the recent windstorm. So at the table for this first item, we have Mayor Aaron Mendenhall, Rachel Otto, Chief of Staff, and Lisa Schaefer, Chief Administrative Officer. I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Hi, Council. The internet's pretty good in the building, but it is quiet here, Mr. Chair. I want to start by thanking our Salt Lake City firefighters who've been going out to assist wildfire fighting in Oregon and in California. We had 23 firefighters deployed to assist in Oregon, and they returned over the weekend, which we're grateful for. And then no sooner did we get a call from folks in Napa, California area, and last night we deployed 6 firefighters to assist in that wildfire fighting. So thank you, and Godspeed to our firefighters who are out there. We're going to turn the time over for an update on the wind emergency with Lorna Vogt.
Hi, thank you, everybody. We are at day 17 of our wind event cleanup efforts, and we're about halfway through to hitting our goal of having all wood off the streets by October 15th, so that we can begin to clear the roads, sweep the streets and the gutters, and get ready for winter weather, fall weather. To date, we have hauled just over 4,500 tons of debris off of the streets, and that's in partnership with 14 other agencies that have been helping us, including the National Guard. We have about 200 city employees who have been working full-time, sometimes 6 days a week on this event since it occurred. We have all trucks and all equipment deployed. We have, let's see, about 800 stumps from trees to remove and more trees to grind, but I would say we're making very good progress right now, and we do think we'll hit our goal. We continue to get outside resources from contracted arborists and others to help us, and continue to make requests through our various mutual aid agreements through the county and with the state. And as those resources come in, they're immediately deployed on the street. We've had no significant injuries or illnesses related to this, thank goodness. All the crews are still reporting high morale, and they're doing a good job. I think we have still a lot of phone calls coming in, but most residents understand that we have taken reports of all their downed trees and damage. We've asked them to put their remaining private debris on the street, the wind debris, and we are making other sweeps through the city now to clean that up. So it's been a huge effort. It couldn't have happened with all the wonderful resources we've had, including all the city departments who have pitched in on this. And I'm feeling quite optimistic right now that we will hit our goal and get the streets cleaned and be back in action. And urban forestry is still planning on planting trees this fall. They are determined to use this to diversify our forest and to get trees back in as many places as we can. Those urban forestry guys are just amazing. They've been amazing throughout the whole thing, and they are absolutely committed to getting some more trees on the streets and back in our parks. I will mention that because the cemetery is a historical area, we are in the process of procuring an archaeologist, and that archaeologist will help with the historical restoration of the headstones and the monuments at the cemetery. So we're learning all sorts of very interesting things about how to deal with these things, and have been in close contact with FEMA to offer assistance, and we are putting together an application package, a preliminary damage assessment that will be forwarded for possible public assistance in the future. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Council members, any questions?
Mr. Chair, it's more of a comment, and just the professionalism of the urban forester and the rest of the departments in the city, especially in Rose Park, has been fantastic. But also, I want to give kudos to the landfill. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've had from people taking trailers thinking they're going to have to pay to dump their trees, and a pleasant surprise, it's free for all of these trees going in there. So, you know, pass that on to them. It is extremely grateful for those individuals that are taking them out there.
And that's a good point, Councilman Rogers, because we are trying to do some recovery and recycling with the wood that we're hauling now. That is one of our primary goals. The landfill has been a tremendous partner, but we know we're taking up valuable landfill space with wood that could be recovered. So we are working on that effort as well.
And
Any other
Mr.
questions?
Chair, can I just mention that the partnership, which is, as you know, Councilmember Rogers, a joint ownership between the city and the county on the landfill, which is operated by the county, and that waiver of tipping fees for residents for the storm debris, it ended on Saturday at the close of business day. Unless I'm mistaken, Lorna, I think that opportunity for the free tipping for storm debris is over at this point. But the city's out picking it up curbside. And so you don't have to make that trip to the landfill as long as you can get that storm debris to your curb.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
I think that was where I wanted to make a question. I think the mayor just addressed it, though. There is cleanup of storm-related damage to trees, even private trees, as long as it's taken to the curb currently. And I think the notice was put out to do it this past weekend. It'll be pick up this week. Is that the intention still?
That is, yes.
Several weeks in like.
I was going to say it's ambitious, but good for you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, let's, Mayor, if you want to go ahead and move on to your next emergency.
Thank you. And I should have given you an outline. Thank you, Lorna, for the wind emergency update. I'm going to give you a brief COVID update. And then we will turn a few minutes over to Jim Wood, the Ivory Boyer Senior Fellow at the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute, to give you a rent and mortgage assistance update. And I know we're going to move quickly because we don't have enough time with you. There's a lot to cover. Then I'll give you an update on the community commitment program, homeless outreach on the street. And finally, I'll talk about policing and our HR facts and figures in that regard. So in terms of COVID, I want to let you know where our current data and our next steps are. According to the state and county departments of health, the biggest increase in the county is coming from social gatherings of young people who are not wearing masks. So as a result of that, we're seeing cases in older people increase because of younger people bringing it home. The city data and countywide data is starting to show some improvements this week. Our citywide percent positivity is just below 8%, and that's with really strong testing numbers right now. We had a spike to 9.3% a couple of weeks ago, and just to put it in perspective, the goal is 5%. Our proxy transmission rate in the city is at 1.47. We had hit a high of 2.23 a couple of weeks ago, and the goal on the proxy transmission is 1.0. Our active positive cases per 100,000 people seems to be heading back down right now. It peaked at nearly 400 And that's a number that the state looks at on a 14-day aggregate. So the question is around whether or not we make a shift to orange. The revisionary criteria is set forth by the State Department of Health, and it looks at several factors in aggregate. The biggest indicators for the State Department of Health are what we've just talked about, the percent positivity, aggregate positive cases per 100,000 people, and the proxy rate. And those recommendations by them are that you revert to tighter restrictions if your percent positivity is greater than 20% over 7 days. And I'll remind you, right now we're at 8%. The positive cases per 100,000 is greater than 400 aggregated over 14 days. And we are not there right now. I'm sorry, actually, I need to pull up the number for where we're at right now, but we're under that. And the proxy transmission rate is above 1.5 or has doubled over a 3 to 7 day period. And we're at that 1.47 right now, where we peaked at 2.23. So we are working right now with Salt Lake County Department of Health on indicators of how we could issue a challenge as a city that would be effective and would be easy for us and the public to see and track. What I'm trying to say is we need to be very direct about where our improvements need to happen. And we also need to be transparent about what data triggers that threshold for us to go back into orange. And of course, that's a request we would have to make through the state. Are there any questions on the COVID data? And if not, I'll turn the time over to Jim Wood with the Chemsey Gardner Policy Institute. They have put together new data for us on how we can best direct rental and mortgage assistance programs in light of COVID-19 impacts. And we sent this report to council on September 15th. So Jim is here to briefly address his findings for us.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be with you and just go over some work that I did in the late spring and during the summer. Needless to say, this is a fast-moving target. And I think, I know I've been humbled by the virus in trying to make forecasts and projections, and the state has as well. But had Angela Price over at Hand first contacted me to examine the need for rental assistance and mortgage assistance in the city. First off, city data is really tough to come by because we just don't have recent data. And so I have to make a few inferences from state data and even in a couple of cases from national ratios. But anyway, first, Angela wanted me to set the context with where we are. And two things. One, our economic context. The other is the housing shortage. And we are doing much better than I expected on the economic front. We have our unemployment rate now is down again as of a week ago. Friday, we're down to 4.1. Only one state has a lower unemployment rate, and that's Nebraska. So in Utah, about 1 in 25 of those who are in the labor force, either looking or currently employed, is unemployed, where if you look at California, you look at New York, it's like 1 in 8. So we've done really well in the recovery. In April, statewide, we had about 155,000 people unemployed. As of Friday last week, we had about 66,000. So we've dropped that by 90,000 in a matter of 3 months. Now on the housing shortage, which does play into this, as you know, we've had a housing shortage now for several years. My concern initially with COVID was that this would make the housing shortage even worse. We had 2 years where we kind of treaded water. We didn't make much headway in reducing the shortage, but we didn't increase it. And I was afraid that we would get much lower levels of production with COVID. Builders would back out and be cautious, as would buyers and developers. That has not proven to be the case. What's happened is low interest rates have overwhelmed really any of the negative impacts of COVID. And so what we see statewide through the first 6 months of 2020 is an all-time record in permits issued for new residential units. In Salt Lake County, we are at the third highest ever, and in Salt Lake City, also the third highest ever. So there's a lot of activity, even though in Salt Lake County, we've had a little bit of retreat from the apartment numbers. But there just isn't a sign right now that COVID has had a big impact on residential construction. That's not to say there has been a negative impact on prices because we still have that shortage and we have this really strong demand pushing prices up. Prices are up 9-10% in Salt Lake County. In the city, statewide, they're up a little under 8%. That's consistent with the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. And a sobering number is the median sales price in the Salt Lake County has gone from has increased 53% in 5 years. So the pain from that has really been masked a bit by low interest rates. So buyers have continued to enter the market, and we do have just an excess of supply or demand compared to supply. Let me talk about now just briefly that the core of the memo that I sent, or the technical report, on the need for homeowner assistance, the need for rental assistance. On the homeowner, why don't we, oh, thank you, Robert. Well, yes. Can I scroll down or oh, okay, I am in control, okay. I need to go down to table 3, which is in page 4. Okay, right there. In Salt Lake City, there are about 38,600 homeowners. Without mortgage, those are living mortgage-free, got about 11,600. With mortgage, 27,000. So those are the at-risk households with mortgages from COVID-19. What it shows nationally, now we don't have numbers locally, but nationally, about 30% of those with mortgages are not covered by the CARES Act. That is, the mortgage is either privately owned or it's a jumbo mortgage, and FHA and the others do not back jumbo mortgages. Jumbo mortgages, of course, are high-income households and pretty low priority for housing assistance in most cases, I believe. So that 1,500 number there is just an estimate of the number of households who mortgage, those who have mortgage who have taken forbearance. And that again is based on a number from the nation. But what we have is really 8,100 homeowners that aren't covered. It's less than that. We don't know how much less it is, but it's something less than that because of the jumbo. But there are a couple of issues on COVID has really hit low income households. 70% of those who applied for unemployment insurance were in sectors that paid less than the median wage of the state. And you're aware of what those sectors are. You've got, retail and of course, anything related to tourism and restaurants and so on. So most likely those are renters. So that, in my view, that tempers the need for homeowners assistance. What I did, and here this is just using some judgment, getting familiar with the data and seeing what's going on nationally to come up with, well, we got 8,100. What can we expect for homeowners who would need a mortgage assistance? And I used at the bottom end, I used a low number of about 1%, partly because of those reasons I just said. It's much less than the 8,100 probably. And then an upper bound of 5%. And using those two bounds, you get on the bottom end, you get about 80 households, and on the top end would be somewhere around 400. Now, if you paid or provided 3 months of insurance or of assistance, you would end up with somewhere between 1.25 million for the bottom end, 1%, and 2.5 million for the 5%. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That number was actually from the renters. But on the homeowners, what we're talking about is 1 to 5%, and it is 80 to 400 renters, homeowners, and it would be less than 500,000 on the bottom end and 2.3 million on the top end. So that's the range of the assistance. If we had something between 1% and 5%, the max, and I just don't think, I think that's a pretty extreme case where would have 2.3 million in assistance for 400 homeowners. So that's the homeowner side. Then on the renter side, Robert, go down to table 7, which is on page 8. There you go. Okay, now again here, I tried to isolate those who are most vulnerable. And so looking at renters who have a cost burden and have incomes, what HUD considers is a low income, 80% AMI. State considers that moderate, but HUD, that's low income. So the number of renter households who in Salt Lake City who are at 80% or less of the median and have a cost burden greater than 30%, it's about 17,300 renters. Now the question is, okay, those are vulnerable renters. How many of those might need assistance? And we have some experience here from the state. The state office, Jonathan Hardy's office in Housing and Community Development, have a rental assistance program underway, and that has been operating for about 3 months now. What they have helped almost 2,000 households. Now, here's another problem. We don't know how many of those are unique because they have to apply each month. But to be generous, I assumed those were all unique. And then I took the Wasatch Front because that's where probably most of the damage is being done for the renter, the 4 Wasatch Front counties. How many renters do we have that the state has helped in Wasatch Front counties that meet these conditions of they are paying more than 30% and that they are in the Wasatch, renters in the Wasatch Front. That is about 92,000 renters, and they've helped about 2% of those to date. Now, there hasn't been a rush for their program, which is a little surprising. But let me digress just for a minute. I just finished a survey for Cushman Wakefield on 18,000 units in Salt Lake County. Didn't have a big enough sample for Salt Lake City, but that was 90 different projects. I asked each manager or landlord on a scale of 1 to 5, how has COVID-19 affected your rent collections? And 1 being very large, 2 being large, 3 moderate, 4 slight impact, 5 no impact. The weighted average of all of that was for the 18,000 units was 3.8, so just below slight, which did surprise me. Only 1 project reported that it was a very large impact. So on the landlord side, it doesn't look as bad as we expected. We don't know too much about the stress the renter is going through. But on the landlord side, they're doing pretty well. So back to, we've got 17,000 here is our universe, and the state has helped 2%. So I took a 2% number there of the 17,000, and that would be about 350 renters that would need assistance, and then rely on what the state's experience. On the top end, I used 4%, which would give us about 700 renters. And here are those numbers again. It's the on the bottom end, it would be 1 point.
I can just jump in really quick. I'm sorry, we're way over time already. And so if we can just get like a copy of this in PDF form, and if you just want to like give us a brief summation, that would be great. Thank you.
Can I have 1 more minute?
Let's make it 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay. So on the renter, it's 1.25 million to 2.5 million to assist the 350 to 700 renters. The things we don't know, is there going to be a second wave? Will we get more federal assistance? Has income rebounded along with employment? And have renters exhausted all of their resources and now are operating under no eviction, and they might have a big bill at the end of December? And has COVID-19, how much has it increased the problem of housing affordability? Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And this is really great. No, you're okay. It's really good information and really important. And we definitely appreciate all the work that went into it. But I can't make the time exist. So sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for that report. And I know that the council will be able to pour through it later.
That'd be great.
We'll move on to the homelessness update and the community commitment program. Phase 1 began on September 14th. It's been going well. We've heard from people in Central City, in Granary, in downtown core areas that are asking for more toilet options. And those are the ones that we're currently working on with the community. We know that we need more restroom options throughout the city. So phase 1, again, is that clean neighborhoods intensive. It can deploy around the city, and it is deploying across the city, and we have the funding through the end of November. Phase 2, which is the dedicated diversion program, is shaping up right now, and I'm happy to tell you that we are ready to launch on October 5th. We currently have the VOA, Addicts to Advocates, the Justice Court, Salt Lake County, and some other treatment providers who are on board. So phase 2 comprises 3 to 4 week efforts in specific locations around the city. It will start with one specific location, which is being determined right now. And I'll walk you through real quickly what those 4 weeks are. The first one is around outreach and development of a by name list. So this is including client service preference. It's getting to know the people who are living in the encampments, their names, what their needs are, how they prefer to be served by all of the different providers who are out there, and how they can connect. So getting to know the area is really important, and they're going to be doing that for the first week. But again, in the second week, more outreach and service matching. So presenting options for services to those individuals to facilitate connections for those who are willing to engage in services. And in the second week, they will set the camp closure date and make sure that it's widely known with the people who are living there. Week 3, they'll hold an outreach fair. They'll put tents up in sort of a fair style operation and include services like flu shots and legal help. That's where people could address outstanding warrants or other legal issues that the Justice Court can come there to attend to. They'll offer food and basic needs supplies. And that outreach continues and that service matching continues in the third week. Somewhere around the fourth week, the camp closure will happen. And again, that will be notified 2 weeks earlier. And it will be, after the camp closure happens, there'll be a consistent presence by the Salt Lake City Police Department to make sure that that camp does not reestablish. So community members who would like to volunteer to help with these efforts, help connecting people with services and making sure that those services are just what they need, and supporting the volunteer efforts, they can reach out to our city's HEART team, and the number is 801-535-7712, or you can always donate to the VOA or Shelter the Homeless. Are there any questions about the community commitment program?
None from council members. Any questions? Councilmember Johnston?
Thank you, Mayor.
Notice in advance.
I appreciate it. The question I have is, it sounds like there's going to be a limited number of geographically targeted locations for this phase 2. And those locations, people will not be allowed to camp again just there, but across the city, they'll still be camping. Is that accurate? Help me understand sort of that piece.
Because the focus of phase 2, and I'll just mention Michelle Hoon is on the call also, so if there's details that I don't have, she can chime in. Phase 2 isn't about sending single service providers out the way that we do with the VOA through our pilot program for on-street outreach. It's about concentrating the service opportunities, the connection opportunities, and the justice opportunities into a team that goes out together. And because of that, it's not possible for us to blanket the city with this outreach effort all at once. So they will be identifying at least one camp to start with, and at what point they can add on additional camp outreach that could be working at different phases at different times, but overlapping. They'll be adding those. But I don't know when the second camp will be able to be added, and I'm not sure if that is possible to be determined yet. Does that answer your question, Councilmember? Maybe Michelle can give more details if there are some.
Yeah, it kind of does. I was, when we talk about camps, I think it'd be important for the council members to understand that when we're talking about for a camp, the size, number of people, because when you think about camping, it could be single tents, 3 tents, 10 tents, sort of. We're not targeting everything, it sounds like, but there's a specific group that would be targeted first, kind of thing.
Yes. Are you asking what that threshold is?
Yeah, because I think I'm just anticipating getting a lot of questions from people about phase 2 and this camp, quote unquote, in my neighborhood here. Is it on the list? Well, is it allowed or not? Sort of, let me message that piece and talk through it and understand it.
Michelle, are you able to answer that threshold question?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the question, Councilmember Johnston. What we're currently doing is we are looking at, we're engaging our outreach partners to help us determine what locations are locations that are already big and growing. I think that those are the areas that we want to focus on first. Areas that are particularly concerning, possibly because of their location, if they're very close to other services that are provided to vulnerable populations. That's something that we want to take into consideration too. But primarily, what we want to do is we want to focus this effort in an area where it's going to make a big impact to the people who are experiencing homelessness in that area. We want to try and focus this effort on getting the most folks into resources that we can. And the best way to do that is by focusing on locations where we know there's a pretty high concentration of people already.
Okay, Councilmember Aldemoros.
Michelle, so from your answer, what I gather is that you know what a high concentration of people, what constitutes a high concentration of people. And I think that's a question that Councilmember Johnson and I have. How do you determine, or have you identified those, or what's a threshold? And any camps that have more than 10 tents, that's the one that you think it's a high concentration. We just need, I think we just need that information so that we can tell our constituents, because we get these answers, these questions all the time. And even when we drive by, maybe something for me looks like a high concentration of people in an encampment, and that's the one that I would target. But I don't know, because that's something that you guys will determine. So if you can give us more clarity on that, it would be great. Please. Thank you.
Yes, so we don't necessarily have like a matrix that we're using with a count of people in a certain area. And largely you can't really do that because encampments tend to shift in nature pretty frequently. Somebody can come into them and go out of them like pretty quickly. But there are certain areas that we know, and these areas are basically the same as the areas that we've identified for the Clean Neighborhoods program, where we do see really high concentrations of people. And as I had mentioned, we're working with our outreach partners to help us determine and work with and kind of prioritize which locations we want to focus this effort on first. But we do understand that on a service provider level, it seems that the service providers do understand that there are some camps that just sort of seem to have a bit higher of a concentration of people. So I wish that I could tell you that there was a specific matrix. And if that is something that we want to develop going forward, I would be happy to do so.
Can you chime in, Michelle?
Yeah.
I am reluctant to put a set number because the point of this, and I know you know this, council members, is about public safety in our public spaces, and that's safety of our residents who are unhoused and our residents who are housed. It's about the safety of our visitors. It's about the safety of our businesses downtown and throughout the city. And the characteristics of encampments, as you know, can change, and it isn't necessarily contingent on that camp being a very, very large size, but the ability for service providers to make connections that are successful in helping people get resources that they need, which is a spectrum of resources, which is why we're doing this phase 2 group effort with so many different service providers, becomes increasingly difficult as the entrenchment of the camps deepen. And so that entrenchment, as Michelle has said, and I think as you know very well, doesn't necessarily switch like a light switch when you go from, say, 9 tents to 10 tents. There's characteristics of camps. And so I would be really reluctant to us putting a hard and fast number on how many people or how many tents that we need to reach, because I think the service providers and Councilmember Johnston's peers at the VOA they know what they need to work successfully with people, to connect people with resources that they need. So I don't think that we should be putting a hard and fast number on this. And Mr. Chair, I have one more section. I know that we're running behind.
Yeah, go ahead.
If there aren't any more questions on the community commitment program, if there are, I'm happy to answer them.
Is it possible that that you share, once you determine or however you will do this, is it possible that we can get information on where you're going in case we have questions from the constituents?
Sure.
Yeah, whenever you determine wherever you go, so that we are informed, and if somebody asks, we know which one is next, or what the process is.
As I mentioned, I don't think they'll be able to tell you a categorized list of what's next because of the fluidity of the camps, but you have already the list of identified locations for phase one, and as Michelle said, many, if not most, or all of those are encampment locations that are being looked at for phase two, and that's the St. Mark's Cathedral area, Toffer Park, the downtown core, North Temple, Ballpark neighborhood, Granary, and then there's a number of other locations identified by the county. And that's a list that we put out with our initial announcement of the community commitment program. We're happy to get that to you if you need us to reconnect you with it.
That's nice, so that we have some sort of parameter now that we know, and we knew, but now we know we're going to follow that one. So that's good information. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Mayor, on your last point.
I wanted to just address something that we've been hearing, and I think you also have as council members, which is a lot of rumors and frankly, a lot of misinformation about police officers leaving our department, and concern that our police department might have difficulty in recruiting officers. So I think that Bobby has a chart that I want to share with you. A lot of those rumors are circulating with businesses and residents around areas where we're seeing the need for more police resources, like North Temple, and hearing that police officers are either slow to respond or simply are not responding. So I want to let you know, I'm happy to share with you that we are not seeing increased numbers of police officers leave this year. And I can walk you through, and I'll just remind everyone that you can zoom on the screen with the left-hand side magnifying glass. This is a chart from Human Resources that shows 2016 through this year, as much information as we have so far, how many police officers have resigned or retired. And you can start to see that there are some months with more retirement or resignation year over year than others. But as we scroll over here to the right and get into June, sorry, it's jumping. In June, you can see, so that's 2020 here on the bottom, that we had, and that, I'm sorry, that's the total where I have the cursor. We had a cumulative of 8 officers resign or retire, and that was up a bit from the year before, 5 and then 4. And then in July, we saw a decrease in people leaving the department. We only saw 6, where the year before we saw 8, and the year before that we saw 7. Into August, we saw another decrease on average, with only 3 officers leaving, and they were all retiring, no resignations. And so, and we track this data, of course, through Human Resources. And in September, we're anticipating, and I'm sorry, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we'll continue to update this for you. Thank you. There it is. September retirements that are anticipated is 4, with 6 resignations. And we know of 2 coming in October. I think this is good news, but of course it's evolving. And as I've said many times before, as we go ahead with reform, we want our frontline officers, we want our police officers to work with us. And that employee advisory board is the function. It's a great function for them, a tool for them to engage in discussion and informing how we evolve as a police department. And we invite them to do that. Chief Brown has an open door policy. I have an open door policy. And if any Salt Lake City employee, whether they're a parks employee, they work out here on the grounds, they lay our streets pavement, they work in public utilities, has an issue with the way that Salt Lake City is treating them or the job we're asking them to do, come and talk to us. And if we can't resolve it, then that's of course every employee's prerogative to go and find other employment. But I'm encouraged to see these numbers in the face of months of rumors. And one other good piece that I'll wrap up with is that in terms of recruitment, you know, council members, that some years we have only double digits of applications. Some years we're lucky and we get into the triple digits of the number of applications when we we do a call for hiring. This year, we've had over 1,000 applications for Salt Lake City Police Department. There's over 1,000 people looking to come and work at the best police department in the state. So we welcome those who want to come and work with us, and we will be, I think, ever extending that table of conversation to our employees as we evolve the organization. So I will leave it at that and ask any or answer any questions that the council might have.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Any questions? Councilmember Dugan?
I heard, is there a new class starting up? I heard something about a new class, police class.
Yes. Yeah, there is a new class starting up, and I'm wondering if Rachel's on the line, because I want to say that there's 20 officers coming in, and these are positions that are open from resignations or retirements. They're not new positions being created. But I might have to get back to you if my number of 20 is incorrect.
Thank you.
Ideally, the police department would be looking to do another opening in January as we, try to keep pace with the need from this normal attrition that's happening.
Other questions, council members? Okay, thank you, Mayor, for that. We appreciate it. Let's see. Did we intend to roll that into the update on relieving the condition of people experiencing homelessness, or are we doing, do you have more on that issue?
I don't, but someone on the administration surely does.
Okay. Because we had a couple of questions that were listed on the agenda. So I don't know if council members want to ask. Well, why don't we hear from, is somebody else on when you say there's somebody else on the call or on the meeting who has information, like, do they have a presentation, or are they available for questions?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I was not told that I was presenting for that part of the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, could I step in, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, would you?
Yes.
Yes.
I think actually the mayor has covered this in combination with some of the other things, because she spoke about several aspects of it. So the only question I think that was outstanding is getting information to the council members on the cleanup that is going on with the health department. And we did get some information from Rachel just before this meeting that the administration will let council members know that recently the health department has been cleaning up areas that are abandoned camps, but not active camps. And so the administration will be getting back to us with that. And then the other question was about the cleaning up of the areas, and she did address that. So I think we're covered on that.
Okay, I kind of thought so too, but I didn't want to cut it off if there was other questions or presentation. Sorry, go ahead, Mayor, again.
I think it was, if there are additional questions on homeless outreach strategies, Michelle is here to answer those. And I want to clarify that We've received over 1,000 interest forms, which is that first step before we open for hiring, and 450 applications, which is still an incredible number, given the number of applications we've received over the last several years. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Councilmember Valdemoros, did I see your hand up again? Nope. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mayor. Let's move on to agenda item number 3, which is updates on racial equity in policing. And with us for that presentation, we have Kira Luke from the City Council office.
This isn't really a presentation so much as a quick sneak preview. I just wanted to share an update and let the council know. The council office has received a draft of a new ordinance on body-worn cameras. The ordinance is supporting the state requirement of activating body-worn cameras the minute an encounter begins. It codifies the executive order of releasing footage within 10 days, and it includes some other practices that the council's given policy direction on. So staff right now is compiling feedback on the draft from council members, and we're planning to return for a briefing on October 13th. That's all from me.
I think we need Mr. Vice Chair to step in.
Yeah, I think
Unless the orange triangle disappears from Chris's tile.
All right, let me pull it up then. So we would be next on the item number 4, right?
Item number 4.
Resolution on Salt Lake City flag redesign briefing, and I believe Mayor and Rachel Otto, Chief of Staff, and Lisa Schaefer, Chief Administrative Officer, are doing this part. Is that correct, Mayor?
The mayor just chatted that she's leaving the city county building to head home, and that she would be back on.
Okay.
So I don't know if we want to skip
Let's
that.
look around.
We can ask if the administrative staff
Yeah.
is here for the
I was
early.
gonna say, Lisa Schaefer, looks like you're on. I don't know if Rachel's on. Is this something you wanted to start or wait until the mayor's available?
I think we should wait for the mayor. Sorry, I'm not sure that she knew she was going to be presenting that one, so I will text her and ask what her plans are, but I think it's good to move on.
Okay. Well, we can go to item number 5 then, the ordinance early notification text amendment follow-up. Are Nick Tarbett and John Anderson and Nick Norris available? Do we know?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Nick Tarbett's here. I think I saw John and Allison Parks here as well, so we might have everybody.
Yeah, this is John. I'm available.
That's awesome. Way to go, guys. Ahead of schedule, even like 20 minutes early, and you're still there. Way to go.
Well, thanks for bumping us up. We appreciate it.
Hey, you're welcome. Anytime I'm in charge, you can do that. We're going to turn over to Nick Tarbett. How about you start this off, and then we'll move on to whoever else wants to jump in.
Okay. Yeah, I'll start us off here, give a quick chronology of how we got here, since there's been about a 6-month delay between now and when the council last heard this. John is going to give a short summary of what the proposal is, and then Allison is here to help answer questions based off of the request from the council for some suggestions on how to amend 2.60 with this. So real quick, what we're here to talk about is it's a proposal to make changes to sections of the city code pertaining to the early notification of the public and recognized community organizations for land use projects. This would amend Title 21A and Title 2, Chapter 2.60, Community Recognized Organizations. The council initiated this petition a few years ago to clarify the process for early notification. The purpose was to increase awareness and participation by the public of various city projects while providing a timely review for applicants. So this first briefing was held on February 4th of this year. During that briefing, the council was generally supportive of what was proposed, but the administration noted that there was some technical changes that needed to be made that were discovered after the ordinance was drafted. The council said, go ahead and add those. And then we came back in March to go over those. That's what John will talk about here shortly. And the council expressed some support for those. At that time also, it was noted that the proposed ordinance is going to impact Chapter 2.60, the recognized community organizations. The attorney's office noted that the current ordinance requires the city to send a notice to the community organizations for following up on these projects. The problem with this that was noted is that things such as budget amendments, budget adoption would technically have to go through the early notification requirement. So that's what Allison will talk about after John's summary.
All right, thanks, Nick. I've had some connection issues, so if sounds like there's an issue, please let me know, and I can send all my notes to somebody else. So yeah, Nick just wanted me to kind of quickly just go over the proposal itself, just because it's been quite some time since we talked about it. I think the most important thing to know is that we're not trying to do less public engagement. We're not trying to avoid community council public engagement. So just overall and quickly, the major changes is one, we added a few processes that would trigger going through the public engagement process. It was design review and then new construction historic district, which in the past didn't require that. We added an early notification process, and this is new and it requires that as soon as we have a complete application,
We can't hear you, John. If you can hear us, you're broken up again.
dang it. All right, sorry about that. Hold on one second. Let me try something else.
You're back now, though.
I'm sorry, I do not know what's going on today. I got a brand new computer and something's not been working, so.
We can hear you now, so go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. So we've already started to implement the early notification process early in the process rather than at the very end. With public engagement, of course, we'll also send a notice to the community council or the recognized community organizations notifying them. There would continue to be 45.
Sorry, John, you're breaking up again, if you can hear us.
Okay. Maybe best if I sent Nick my comment. I'm wondering if Nick, it would be easier if you wanted to try and read those. I apologize.
That's okay. It's been technical issues across the board, so you're not the only one. Nick Tarbett, I'm assuming he's referring to you, unless it's Nick Norris.
Yeah, I've got him here. I guess we could ask, does the council need that recap of what we talked about, what the council was supportive of? It was in the staff report. I guess maybe it's easier to just cut to the chase. If you have questions, we could answer those. Do you need that summary again?
Other questions from the council about the background here?
Okay.
Seeing none, so go ahead.
All right, so maybe we'll, Allison, hopefully your connection is a little bit better than John's. Allison can step through what the three options that are outlined in the staff report regarding Chapter 2.60 potential amendments.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Allison Parks here, a senior city attorney from the city attorney's office. So in the staff report, Nick put in three different options for amendments, for additional amendments to 2.60. So I think it's important just at the outset to indicate that I'm just looking for guidance from you all on how you want to move forward with this. And the options that are provided in the staff report are just to kind of highlight they're not the only options, but they're just kind of the range of potential amendments that you might want to consider. They're kind of along the spectrum of options you might want to consider. So please just take them as ideas or suggestions. And please jump in if you have any questions.
So,
But again, like Nick and
sorry.
John were saying, oh, sorry.
Council members, the options are starting on page 2 of the staff report in blue and going into page 3 and a little bit on 4, but mostly 2 and 3.
That's right. Thanks.
Sorry,
And
Allison, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you for pointing that out. I think that's really helpful. So option 1, just really briefly, high level, that option is just to adopt what has already been proposed from the planning division's proposed changes and just leave the rest of 2.60 as it is. So that leaves in place the 45-day waiting period, and then requires that early notification for all of those other items that are specifically still listed and not crossed out. Option 2 is a proposal to adopt more changes, and it would narrow the scope of the things that and the projects that require early notification. I don't think it's presented in your staff report, but there was also an option to adopt modifications and carve out exceptions for when early notification might not make sense. And this mirrors what planning has already proposed. So things like emergencies or amendments that might need to be made quickly because of enacted legislation or litigation. So those carve outs would be there. And then option 3 is would basically remove all of those specifically enumerated projects that would require early engagement and leave it up to the departments to decide to make a policy about how they would engage with the recognized community organizations. So again, those are just a spectrum of options, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are and kind of what direction you guys would like to see 2.60 to go to. Any thoughts, questions?
So Nick Tarbett, could we ask a question of you, a clarification on the staff report?
Yep.
In those options, there are listed itemized pieces of there. Some of them are crossed out. Just for the council clarification, what does the crossing out of that of each of those mean?
So the crossing out would indicate removal from the ordinance on that.
So in those situations, there would not be a requirement to do early notification?
For specifically for those, so yes, so in option 1, if we look through that, those are all planning related items that are being proposed. Those that's going over to chapter 21 or title 21, those will be done. It's just these other ones would be left at that point. So those will be done by planning staff still, but the concern was these other items, for example, city code amendments is pretty wide, and we're not necessarily doing that on all these at this point anyway. So this was the opportunity for the council to decide, okay, maybe this is not necessary to be doing this at this point. Option, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Question or somebody, who that was. Welcome back, Chair Wharton.
Thanks. Sorry for that brief disruption, and special thanks to James Rogers for letting me come over and use this conference room.
Excellent. We just did a brief overview of the proposal for the notification changes and questions about the 3 options in the staff report we're at right now.
Okay, great. So we are now to, I know the mayor wants to do the flag briefing. So we can go to.
We're right in the middle of the early notification ordinance discussion, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying you'd finished it already. Okay.
No, we're just in the middle. Sorry.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, okay. Let's keep going then.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, I guess does the council prefer one of these options? From what you've seen of those, is there one that you think is the preferred route to go forward with the early notification process?
And yeah, and I will just jump in too. If you like parts of one and parts of another, we can definitely combine those as well. So So don't feel like these are just your only options.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Johnson.
As I looked at them, it looked like the scope's kind of narrows as you get to, well, not quite true. So 1 seems like it's the broadest requirements for notification. 2 seems like it narrows it down to major ones, and 3 gives a lot more discretion to the individual departments. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary of those options.
And my gut instinct is to trust the departments for option 3, but I know that's probably not always where we go with this. I wonder if I'm trying to kind of weigh the trade-offs here about what is the effort and time and resources required in 1 to do that notification constantly across the board versus 2, where it's limited to maybe major, sort of quote unquote major items.
And I'll jump in here and say that as far as option 2 as well, we've proposed adding early notification just for major city code amendments, but there's an opportunity here to specifically define what major city code amendments are too.
Mr. Chair.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. First, Councilmember Dugan, and then Councilmember Fowler.
I'm kind of with Councilmember Johnson on the options. Option 3, though, my concern there is, that residents sometimes feel like, hey, we're not getting any notification on anything. They complain it's at the last moment. And so if we just give it to the discretion of the departments, we may not have those. And then we see a lot more complaints on notifications. So I'm more in line to the majors, and then we just have to define the majors a little more specifically. I'm not in favor of just letting a blanket to the departments to decide the early notifications.
I don't have a question anymore, but I think I'm in agreement with Councilmember Dugan. Dugan, I almost called you Dukes, but sorry to think about that.
I would also say maybe let's just define it while we're doing this, so that we're not back here next year, because there was some disagreement over what constitutes major. That would be my preference.
So, if I may, I feel like, now listen, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think that it seems to me that we would need a proposal of what the major definition would look like from sort of both the attorney and planning and departmental contribution into what quote unquote major is defined as, and then come back with a proposal regarding that. But it sounds like what the departments need is some sort of direction of where we're headed, and then to kind of redefine, to further define some of those major key terms, and then come back with a more succinct proposal. Is that what I heard, Allison? Is that the summary?
Yeah, I think that is probably that probably makes the most sense, is to get direction from you guys today, and then be able to put together a red line so you can see exactly what that will look like. But if there's specific direction that you want to give tonight about what might constitute a major city code amendment, I would love to receive that.
Mr. Chair, this is Nick Norris. Can I add a little context and history to this? Because I think it's relevant to this discussion. When we first started this project, we were asked to essentially do this exact thing with all the different departments and to try to wrangle it in. And we couldn't find consensus And so we decided that we needed to move forward with at least the planning related stuff because we have some issues with how and what's required by noticing. We have adapted and we're doing things that aren't required by ordinance. Like, for example, the current code doesn't require early notification to next door neighbors, only to the recognized organizations. So somehow you may have a project that is a mile away from everybody who attends the community council meeting, but the next door neighbors may not know anything about it. And so that's a big thing that we've been trying to fix through this. And so just wanted to add that context is that it might be, I think this is a bigger discussion than what maybe we think it is in terms of trying to define what a major code amendment is or what other things have to go through this. And so just that's my 2 cents for whatever it's worth.
Okay, Councilmember King.
Yeah, in looking at the first one, it looks like the first one keeps much of it intact, but makes those modifications that Nick is talking about. It seems like a safe sort of beginning point versus that option number 2, which is a much larger discussion about what constitutes a major versus a minor. So I'm leaning towards option 1 as a starting point for this modification process. But I wonder if it is a process, Nick, that it's going to take us a while to start talking through this with other departments in the city. And I don't know how we figure that out. That's a little overwhelming for my head right now.
I do think it's important to point out here that if we do leave the ordinance or amend it as is provided under option 1, then it will require early notification for all city code amendments.
And that does include budget amendments, since those are technically code amendments.
And I'll just chime in, that would be pretty problematic from a processing perspective, just in terms of the amount of time that it already takes the administration to get budget amendments to the council. We do have a 2-week, advertising requirement just generally, and always have a public hearing for a budget amendment, but I don't think that was the original intention when the council kind of first got this ball rolling. Just food for thought.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's the intention at all.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think one suggestion that could be, it's a little wordy, but one thing that could be added is that there's specific chapters that would have to go through the early notification, so that starts to limit down what level of code changes. So, for example, if there's changes to the building code chapter or the parks chapter, maybe those are things that have to go through it, but maybe some, if they're not specifically listed, then maybe they wouldn't be subject to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to provide some kind of narrowing, and I just am not comfortable leaving it as open-ended as it stands right now. Sorry, that's my personal feedback.
So,
Member John,
Chair, would it make sense then? So it seems to me that maybe we're on track with number 1 minus the city code amendments, but we come back like with recommendations of what Nick just said, where we list off a few more specific sections of code that would have to go through that. So we would keep the items such as major changes to street capacity or travel modes. I think Councilmember Dugan's had good experience with that recently, that the community was really interested in that stuff. Upgrades to facilities and structures, since that's got a pretty big budget impact. We leave those, we go add a few sections that are of public interest and then come back to the council with those.
Yeah, that'd be great. Councilmember Johnston had a question. You're muted. Andrew, you're muted.
Sorry. That sort of was my thought and one, but the other thought was, if we were feeling strong, go with 3 and then go through department by department and talk through the details of each one. I don't know if I feel that strong this year.
Well, isn't there a way, Allison, I know there is, and that you'll be able to figure it out, to put forth a definition that will be easy to add to later. if we need to take something out or put something in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, at some point, if you determine that something needed to be added to this definition, you could either expand the scope of either what major city code amendments means, or if you decide to strike that line out completely, just add it, that specific kind of amendment to the list of things that require early notification.
Okay. Any other questions on this item?
So if I can just remind, the public hearing was set for October 6th, but the council will have the option to continue that to be able to get public feedback on this next option that we will come up with for council to consider.
Okay, I think we had one more question from Councilmember Fowler.
Less of a question. Nick Tarbett and Nick Norris and Allison Parks, can I set up a small group meeting with you? None of us have enough small group meetings going on right now. But just to kind of go over some of this a little bit more in depth for me, if that's okay. And any council member, other two council members are welcome to join that small group meeting.
I think that would be great. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Excellent. So we'll go back to what, jumping back onto the agenda. Item number 4, the Salt Lake City flag redesign. We have with us Mayor Mendenhall, who wanted to present the process and the end result to us for consideration. So I'll turn the time back over to you, Mayor.
I'm sorry for the interruption in my attendance, Mr. Chair, and thanks for your flexibility.
No problem. It actually worked out great timing wise. So.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm actually frozen. Am I still working for you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm just having an internet issue. I believe that a good flag has the ability to unite a city that works under it, and possibly even personify the people that live in the city that it represents. Many years ago, a new Salt Lake City flag made its way up the flagpole at City Hall, but the design has never been completely embraced by our residents. So my team consulted with some of the foremost experts in vexillology, which is the study of flags and flag design, and we decided to move forward in finding a new flag for Salt Lake City. So on May 1st, we put out an open call for design submissions, as you'll remember. We received over 600 entries, and the Salt Lake City Flag Design Committee was convened to narrow that field down. And the committee included 10 individuals from a whole span of backgrounds and experiences, and we want to thank those committee members for volunteering in this effort. The committee had no personal or demographic information about who designed all of those 600 submissions. Instead, we followed some key design principles on good flag design to narrow that field of over 600 down to 8 flags for the public to rate. Those key principles of flag design are: keep it simple, use meaningful symbolism, use 2 to 3 basic colors, no more, no lettering or seals on the flag, and be distinctive or be related. So we provided those same key principles of design for the public and asked the public to rate each design for the symbols that were used, the colors, the overall design, and how well each one may represent Salt Lake City. And we went from over 600 design submissions to more than 6,000 people responding to the survey over the course of several weeks. And afterward, the committee came back together to evaluate that survey data. The field of over 600 was more easily narrowed down then to 8 top designs. And the 8 that were out there for the public's review were narrowed down to 2 top designs. one of those, and I can pull it up if you'd like. Mr. Chair, would you like to see it?
Yes.
If when staff shares that sharing privilege with me, I will pull it up for you.
I've made you the presenter, Mayor.
Thank you, Bobby. I appreciate it. And I still don't have share as an option there.
Mayor, I have that PDF as well, if you'd like me to share it.
Oh, please, yeah. Thank you. Let's go first with the honeybee. One of the two was a stylized black honeybee overlaying a golden honeycomb centered on two horizontal bands, as you can see, of sky blue and white. And, or it's coming up, sorry. I'm looking at it, it looks pretty great. Okay, so that was one of the two. And the other one, if you would, Bobby, is the white and golden sago lily that was centered on an isosceles triangle of deeper blue under these sky blue triangles. On the first design, the committee really loved the use of the blue and white backdrop, which could symbolize the snow or the sky, the Great Salt Lake, and salt, or even our city's name, Salt Lake. With the second design, we really loved the use of the sago lily. That's a flower, as you know, that's indigenous to our state. It was here long before anyone settled, and it symbolizes resilience. We thought that the sago lily was a symbol that a more broad spectrum of our city residents could see themselves in than a honeybee. So the committee decided to merge the two flags for our final design. And I want to tell you who our flag's designers are. It's two young women, Salt Lake City locals, Ariana Mine King, who's 18, and Ella Kennedy Yoon, who is 17 years old. Ariana has lived in Salt Lake City her whole life. She recently graduated from West High School, and she's preparing to attend Harvey Mudd College in California, but she expects to return to our fair city, which is where her family lives. And she said the thing she loves most about the city is that it offers a lifelong community of people who value each other and where they live. Ella was born and raised in Salt Lake City. She's the youngest of 4 children. She's a senior at West High School. Once a Panther, always a Panther. And she believes Salt Lake City is defined by its wonderful residents. So it was, for me, a very touching and exciting revelation that the two designers we selected both happen to be the future of our city in these young women who are 17 and 18 years old. We're in a moment of a once in a generation time where we are making many dramatic and necessary changes to our city. I think the change of the flag is it's a perfect moment for us to change that symbol that represents the city and our residents, more importantly. And I hope that the council will find it in their favor to approve this design at your upcoming meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Do council members have any questions about the design or the process? Anything about that? Councilmember Johnston.
I don't have a question per se. I think they've done a good job of laying out the process, the analytics of it, which is helpful, and then the narrowing down with the expertise. I know when I don't know how many years ago this was, a couple of years back when there was a vocal movement to start looking at the flag, probably 2 or 3 years in there, I can't recall now. That I brought it up, and I remember getting feedback from the council staff who've been around much longer than I have, they're very experienced, about the previous effort to redo the flag and the product, and how difficult that process had been. And I don't know about all the steps of it, but clearly when it got to the council level, it got very difficult. And so I was sort of warned in some ways about wading into this, and I'm very glad that the Mayor Mendenhall decided to dive all the way in on it and just make it happen, because it can be really problematic to get into design. So I'm sure that a lot of folks will have issues with certain elements or pieces of it, and not everybody will immediately perhaps sort of embrace it automatically. But I like the fact that the process was open to the public. I like the fact that they took in as much public comment and analyzed it as deeply as they could. And I love the fact that two young residents of the city were the impetus for the design. So I embrace this. I'll support it fully.
Thanks, Councilmember. Mr. Chair, could I make a comment?
Yes, please.
This endeavor was really supported and informed by a fantastic volunteer who's not from our city. His name is Ted Kay, and he is the author of a book called Good Flag, Bad Flag, and the one who outlined those design principles that I mentioned at the beginning. And he volunteered to sort of usher our committee through all of the selection processes we went through. Thank you, Council Chair, for serving on that committee. There was a lot of work that went into it, and even though we'd schedule this much time, we ended up needing much more time every time we'd meet. It was a very thorough discussion, but we went into it with Ted's guidance, recognizing that it's not an easy process. And I think that many cities initiate a process but can't ultimately come to a consensus on a design. And also that it may take a while for the public to get their arms around it, but I think what we ended up with is the best possible design, and the committee was in consensus about the support. So here we go.
Other questions or thoughts?
Do you think the designer can be in our next meeting just to tell us about herself or about why she chose the colors and what you said, but maybe she can do it?
Yes, I know that. I think they would love to. I told them they could attend to listen tonight, and I don't think we have any attendees in right now, but I think they would be honored to do that.
That would be awesome. Just 1 minute, nothing serious.
Sure.
To see her. Thanks.
And if you'd like, for scheduling purposes, we could do it during a work session or ask them to come give public comment at the next meeting.
Thank you. Oh, Councilmember Mono.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for this effort. This is, I think, actually more important than people realize. Nobody even knows what our current flag looks like, or most people don't know what it looks like. And if you go to cities with a really good flag, you see the flag everywhere, and it starts to become a symbol of the city, and people sort of coalesce around it. And so I think this is important, and I appreciate that it's happened. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just told that they are both listening and watching. I think they're watching it on YouTube. So thank you, Ella and Ariana.
I'll just add that as a member of the committee, the Sago Lily wasn't really my first choice as a symbol, but as I came to, through our discussions and talking with the different members of the committee and really thinking about what the Sago Lily symbolizes as our state flower, being something that grows in really harsh conditions. It's rocky terrain, it's not a lot of water, but is indigenous to the foothills around Salt Lake City, and can grow in spite of those harsh conditions. And then also that, not only is it beautiful, but that, its bulbs were eaten by indigenous people in Salt Lake Valley, and that information was passed on to the early settlers of the valley to help sustain them and build this city that we call home. And then also that there's a lot of different symbolism that you can read into it, but one of the committee members pointed out that emphasized that Salt Lake City is the only capital city in the United States that has 3 words in its name. And the sago lily has 3 main leaves on the flower, so it could stand for Salt Lake City as well. And I thought that was cool, just to hear different people's taking their takes on it. And that's really what, Mayor, maybe you remember what Ted said about how, it's kind of up to the people that the flag represents to really assign what it means to them. And that over time that, we hope that this flag will be one that is general enough that it can speak to something within all of our residents. So I hope that's my hope as well. And now I love the sago lily so much that I'm pretty obsessed with it as a flower or as a symbol for Salt Lake City. And I'm glad that I was persuaded by the other committee members. Not unlike the tenacious sago lily itself, which stood criticism, but continued to flourish. So
Reach, but okay. Mr. Chair, could I take just 2 more minutes, please?
Sure.
Because you brought up some of the symbolism that one of our community and committee members, John Hardfixing, brought up. And there were a few more great symbols that he helped identify. And one is that the white and blue represent peace and justice traditionally. And he said those ideals unite the diverse population and symbolize the harmony of Salt Lake City residents moving forward to reach common values and aspirations. The golden stamen of the flower symbolizes future growth that comes with each succeeding generation. And I think that these are just the beginnings, as you said, of the symbols that people will find in the flag and its simplicity, but I think elegance allows the meanings to come from the people. Another great thing that Ted Kay mentions and talks about in his book is that flags are supposed to be representations of the people, not of the government. And so the symbol of City Hall, which is so emblematic to me of Salt Lake City, is really a city of our government, a symbol of the government. It's not a symbol of the people. And I hope that the people of Salt Lake City will be able to see themselves and see the greatness of our potential future in that flag that we put forward to you today. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnston.
Madam Mayor, is all this being documented down officially? So as we roll that to the public and for future years to come, will be a deeper understanding of the flag and what it represents to folks as they add their own meaning to it?
Yeah, Councilmember, are you asking about the process so far and the definitions that have come up?
2 pieces. Everything you've talked about now, I think, is very important in discussing the flag with the public. I think it's also critical for after all of us are gone, and anybody who's involved in this maybe is not around, to have some documentation of all the things you just talked about how the symbolism, what it meant to folks originally, why it was chosen. So as they add on other layers, there's still a foundation there that we can document.
That's a beautiful idea, and I want to thank Lindsay Nicola for really spearheading this and finding Ted Kay and getting his assistance. And she is probably the biggest fan of the flag outside of Councilmember Chris Wharton. And I know that she's collected all of this narrative and history so far. I think our flag should have its own Wikipedia page, at least as a repository of everything how we came about and with the flag and what the symbols are that we've at least initially identified. But we will be sure to put something on the city's website as well about the flag. And we welcome the council's ideas and thoughts on the flag itself.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mayor, and thanks for all the feedback from council members, and this is on our agenda for adoption at the next meeting. So, and then we'll make sure and reach out to the two designers and have them there so that they can participate in that moment. All right, that brings us to agenda item number 6, which is a report of the chair and vice chair. I don't have a report. Do you have a report, Mr. Vice Chair? Okay. Then we have report and announcements of the Council Executive Director, Cindy Gus Jensen. Do you have anything that you want to announce?
We have 2 items. Jennifer pulled them up. Thank you, Jennifer. We have wanted to ask your permission whether we could do some early advertising for the shared housing ordinance amendments, the SRO, and that would just allow us to keep that moving. At the same time, I'm asking you that question. I also want to ask if it's okay with you if we sort of package. There are a lot of housing items that are coming to you, and they could have significant changes to the face of our city. And what we thought we would do is try to work with the mayor's office and with planning and the CAN department to come up with a comprehensive briefing on housing and how these various proposals interrelate with one another and how they would relate to the efforts that I think HAND is underway with the mitigation ordinance. So we'd like to get the SRO ordinance advertised quickly, and we'd also like to see if you're interested in that a conversation that we hope would put all of the different pieces of the housing efforts in context with one another.
Okay.
Question mark.
Council members, anyone want to weigh in on Cindy's question?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm not opposed to early advertising for the SRO. I'm not exactly sure I completely understand what it accomplishes, but I think that's fine. But I'm definitely interested in the conversation about the multiple large-scale planning efforts to increase housing within the city, and having those conversations in context with one another, I think is a good idea. So definitely yes to the other one. No opposition to the first.
And we may end up doing early advertising only to come back to say to you, gee, is it okay if we just hold off on action, getting this scheduled for action so that it can be part of the contextual discussion. So you're giving us a lot of flexibility. Thank you. And then the other item is the school board. Periodically, the council members typically meet with the school board, and that is scheduled for Friday, October 23rd. And usually that is the chair, vice chair. No, it's the legislative subcommittee, I think. There we go. Nope, chair, vice chair, and RDA chair. Okay, so that will be coming up, and we spoke with the chair and vice chair today in their meeting about including the city administration in that conversation. So we'll just invite council members to give topic ideas to the staff or other council members, and then we'll coordinate with the school district and the administration. And that is it. Thanks.
Thanks, Cindy.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Rogers.
I had a suggestion with the school board meeting.
Mhm.
And it's to invite Sago to attend that as well. There are always legislative topics that come in, having been to this meeting several times, that always come out, and I feel like sometimes it gets dropped. So it would be a good opportunity for them to be there.
Okay, great. We'll do that.
Okay. All right. Any other ideas? Just let one of us know. Thank you.
Okay. we'll go on to the last item on our agenda is a closed session. And so I will look for a motion.
I don't have any language in front of me.
We had contemplated going into closed session for the purpose of discussing advice of counsel and pending litigation.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we go into closed session for the advice of counsel and for pending litigation.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion from Councilmember Johnston, a second from Councilmember Dugan. Is there any discussion to this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and roll call it. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Valdemoros.
Yes.
Mono.
Yes.
Dugan.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We have a separate link for that. If everyone will just go to that. See you there. Thank you.